New video tonight emerging of the vicious killer who blew himself up and murdered 22 and wounded dozens more Monday night in Manchester, England. A neighbor shot this footage of Salman Abedi last July. This video coming out as the British government has expressed outrage and blame towards America for leaks in the investigation. For more, let's bring in Chief White House correspondent John Roberts, live from Italy, where the president is tonight. John?
Kimberly, good evening to you. You know, the plague of leaks at U.S. agencies took a troubling new turn today when police in the U.K. said they were going to stop sharing intelligence and evidence with their U.S. counterparts because of the plague of leaks that have been coming out here, at least in the United States, about the Manchester bombing. They were infuriated in the U.K. when the name of the bomber was released in the United States before they were ready to release it. And then the fact that these photographs of bomb evidence showed up in the New York Times really had them basically just hit the roof. So Theresa May, when she came to NATO today, said that she was going to speak with President Trump about the intelligence sharing that's going on between the U.S. and the U.K. Listen here.
That partnership is built on trust, and part of that trust is knowing that intelligence can be shared confidently. And I will be making clear to President Trump today that intelligence that is shared between law enforcement agencies must remain secure.
You know, for his part, the president really was incensed about all of this. He's been complaining about it for a long time, releasing a statement saying, quote, "The leaks of sensitive information pose a grave threat to our national security. I am asking the Department of Justice and other relevant agencies to launch a complete review of this matter, and if appropriate, the culprit should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law." Now, when he was addressing the NATO summit earlier today, President Trump really kind of appealed to the other 27 member nations of the alliance to throw in more on the issue of terrorism than they have in the past, to become full partners in going after ISIS and the terrorism that it inspires. Listen to what the president said.
All people who cherish life must unite in finding, exposing, and removing these killers and extremists. And yes, losers. They are losers. Wherever they exist in our societies, we must drive them out and never, ever let them back in.
Now, NATO is taking more steps in terms of counterterrorism. They're creating a counterterrorism unit and putting in place a single person who will coordinate that unit. But they were very clear in a communique today, Kimberly, saying that they are not at the point where they're going to engage in military action as an alliance, or at least maybe even the individual member nations against ISIS. But the president would like to see them do that. Rex Tillerson, the Secretary of State, as he was en route from Israel to Italy yesterday or the day before, it's getting a little hazy now, said that he thinks that they'll probably move in that direction, but right now they're going to stay in an observational standpoint. Kimberly?
All right, John, thank you. Okay, Dana, where do we stand?
Well, I think on the leaks portion of this, that it is dangerous if you have an investigation that's ongoing and you reveal evidence too early. For example, some of the photographs that were put forward included pictures of the bolts that were used. So you could conceivably trace that back, and people who are responsible could cover their tracks if they think that they're about to get made because of the investigation. That said, it is possible that you could go through an investigation like this and find out that the leak was not necessarily meant to hurt President Trump or to hurt the UK investigation. This information was out there and available, and there could have been a miscommunication between the Brits and the Americans, but obviously it should be investigated. I do also think, though, we have to remember that leakers are sometimes glamorized, okay? And that would include somebody like an Ed Snowden. So he becomes extremely famous, and he is just praised from certain quarters from all over the world. He's living the high life, even though he has to live in Russia. But he's with his girlfriend, and he's fairly free, but he gets all this attention. And I think that glamorizing leakers such as Ed Snowden and not actually holding them to account for this type of thing leads to others thinking that they could get away with it and not pay a consequence.
Okay. Greg, so where do we go from here in terms of our relationship? The UK obviously is upset. They're concerned about these leaks. This sort of puts the U.S. a little bit on its heels, but it could be an advantage to President Trump if it's played out right?
Well, I just came up with this phrase, loose lips sink ships.
Wow, original.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think it's going to catch on.
Get that from the Navy guys that are outside?
Yes.
Sink Brits.
Yes. So there you go. You need to keep England happy. It's basically our spouse in this world. It's the closest relationship that we have. So is this a big deal, and why? From an intelligence standpoint, I'm not sure, because I don't know. It was 2 days later. The stuff was out there. But from a respect standpoint, it's a big deal. There's always a conflict here. America is the big fish, and countries bristle when we don't observe their boundaries. They know that we're the most powerful country in the world. We don't have to throw it in their face. They don't want to be the Robin to our Batman, even though they are the Robin to our Batman. But I think, countries also should worry a little less about the information leaks after an attack and about the acting on the information before the attack.
Exactly.
I think I would be more outraged. Preserve your outrage for what happens before.
That's a great point.
Thank you.
Be more upset about what you missed to prevent it to begin with than the aftermath and saying, oh, we're upset now because you're, giving some information up. All right, Jesse, so what do we do to kind of mend this relationship? Obviously, the UK is upset. We know we have a leaking problem. But now I think this gives the president a platform to say, listen, we're going to get to the bottom of this. Whoever's behind it is going to have to be prosecuted. Enough is enough.
It's an interesting point. This plays right into the president's hand, why the leakers have now overplayed their hand. They're playing a very dangerous game now, and it feeds into his mantra about plugging these leaks and the fake news media and the enemy from within. I think it's one thing for a leaker to leak something that embarrasses the president or sets up maybe an obstruction of justice charge against the president, but it's a whole other thing, and I don't know the motivation here, to leak something that damages our alliance or embarrasses an ally or destroys the trust of a great ally or even potentially jeopardizes our national security. So, President Obama
they want the president to get the blame.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know I don't really know the motivation, but yeah, it doesn't make the United States look trustworthy. So someone has an agenda. It's either holdover Democrats that are trying to destroy the Trump presidency from within. It's either bureaucrats or Republicans in there that never liked President Trump that are trying to wage political warfare against him. Or it's just fake news stuff. There's a lot of anonymous sources out there. Who's telling these reporters these things? Are there actual administration officials saying these things? Where are they getting the information?
Well, no, but it seems credible if the UK is upset about it.
This one seems credible, but I think in the broad scheme of things, a lot of this other stuff comes out in the middle of nowhere. So they have to probably initiate some sort of task force, make an example out of something.
But it's on this president's watch. That's the problem. It's why he's upset, and justifiably the UK is upset. Something has to be done about it. This doesn't look good for the United States, period.
I agree. I think this leakapalooza, which is what I like to call it, we're at 120 some odd days into the Trump leakapalooza, and I think it looks really bad for the United States. But here's the thing. I don't think you can blame the journalist who's getting this information, reporting it responsibly. And a lot of times journalists, we saw last week where they said, we're not going to reveal the city. We're just going to reveal the information pertaining to the leak. You've got to deal with the leakers. And at the end of the day, all of these leakers report to one person, Donald J. Trump. He is the head of this government. And for 130 some odd days, he's been talking about getting the leakers. And guess what? They're still leaking.
Well, when the government's so big, it's hard to really find these guys.
Well, and also, I think also this leak, however it got out, I don't think that it was necessarily intended to specifically hurt President Trump. The other ones certainly were. So maybe they'll find that it's the same person. I don't know. But I also think that our relationship is so good, and the president was able today to have face-to-face diplomacy and say, I'm sorry, I'm going to try to fix this. And by 6 o'clock tonight, when Bret Baier was doing special report, he had breaking news alert. Okay, just found out that the Brits now have said, okay, no problem, we're going to start sharing intelligence again. So the stoppage of intel sharing lasted about 6 hours. So if you got in a fight with your husband or your wife, 6 hours later, you can actually, if you have a good enough relationship, you can put it behind.
This was, in a relationship, a sulk.
As my mother would say, you never let the sun go down in your anger if you're in a marriage.
Yes, that is so
And so we have amended the marriage.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I do think, all leaks are different. Whether this is a big, falls under the umbrella of these other leaks, I think leaks never go away because humans can't shut up, and they always use information and gossip as tools to bond. So an officer might go to the press because it creates an alliance. And so this is why it's so hard in every business, including our own. We can't control what's being said. No one can. That's why I think this leak is on a different path and a different lane than these other ones. And I think that the real story is the relationship, how to keep the relationship strong,
well, that's
especially when you've been together for a long time. It gets the 7-year itch and all that other stuff.
We can't deal with your problems tonight, but thank you.
There is a similarity here, though. A lot of these leaks have created problems with our allies. Look at the transcripts.
Right.
Australia, Mexico, the Philippines,
Good point.
Israel.
Yeah.
That's the common denominator here, that
Jesse,
a lot of these leaks are destroying the relationships between all of our good allies.
Which is why Donald Trump's got to get to the bottom of it. It's not a task force. He's got to say he's supposed to be the art of the deal, supposed to be this amazing businessman. Walk in there, you're the CEO of this company, fix the problem and stop complaining about it.
But the problem is it's not an exact replica in terms of a model of the private sector. He's dealing
That's
with...
what he ran on, Kim.
But the reality of the situation is he has people that are in there that are career people who have been appointed to positions that you're not able to fire. I mean, just look at the VA. I agree. So the problem is he's stuck with that. They're there. They know that. Yeah. He kind of can't touch them, and so that's a problem. And then you have people disseminating information, with lack of veracity, not even a goal objective here. And so then what do? He's now the guy who's on the watch. He's the team captain.
But that's what happens when you have nobody in your White House that's ever worked in the White House before.
You know what? The minute Trump
he has
starts
to have loyal, trustworthy people in with him. Otherwise, it's going to continue to happen.
And the minute Trump starts firing the leakers, you're going to start calling them whistleblowers. And they need protection.
I think we should get the leakers. I just don't think he has the capability to find them.
We'll get to the bottom of it.
Bring in an outside agency. There are ways.
Jesse's done it.
I'm very worried. I'm very worried.
We got this.